Hey gang, welcome back. Thanks for the wait. Tim here. I'll talk if you'll listen. Episode 37, and I'm back like I never left. How are you all managing? Me, I'm managing pretty well. I'm okay, just okay, slightly above okay. On the scale of 1 to 10, probably I call it an 8.5. Let's call it an 8. So a little bit better than okay. So I'm doing something pretty special. I'd be remiss if I don't mention it now. So that way all of my viewers can be pretty happy about this. So I am doing an Instagram live as we speak during the recording of this episode. So shout out to everybody who is watching right now. I have Nishay watching. I have my buddy Olay watching. I got a couple people watching right now. So a few reasons why I decided to do this. And then we're going to get back into our normal flow of things. The first reason is I thought it'd be pretty cool. Wanted to spice it up a little bit. Luckily, I'm not super famous yet. Luckily, I'm not hosting the Tonight Show yet. So I can do a little bit of experimentation and see what works, see what doesn't work. And hey, if it doesn't work, no harm, no foul. It is not like this show is going to go down in flames. So it gives me time and opportunity to try something new. And I like this. This is a little bit more interactive, whether it's 2 or 3 people watching, whether it's 20, 30, 100 people watching. It gives a new level of interaction with the show, I think. And I think it'll be a great transition into actually doing this live. The scary part about it, and no pressure, but the scary part about it is since I am on IG Live, people will get to see the mess ups, see and hear the mess ups, the mistakes, the fumbles, the stutters, the burps, the sneezes, all of that those out there listening to the pre-recorded version of the episode don't get to see and hear. So a little bit more nervousness, a little bit more pressure, but I think it's good. Pressure makes diamonds, right? So I think it's pretty cool. And it also gives everyone who gives me the honor of, having you as a follower and having you interacting with the show. It gives you an extra level of content, gives you an extra level of behind the scenes. So if you're new to the show, you may not know, but I do post all of my, with the exception of my Facebook, all of my social media content. Place that in the description of the show. So that's the YouTube, that's the Twitter, that's the Instagram, all of that. You get to tune in on there, maybe for the next episode. When the next episode is about to be recorded, of course, I'll make the announcement via Twitter usually. Sometimes I make it via IG. And I'll go live and you'll get the notification if you're following me and kind of go from there. But this is pretty cool because it lets me wave and interact. We got my buddy, my OG buddy, Tony on. Tony, how you doing, buddy? Got my high school buddy, Ray on. How are you? Devin's on. It's really nice to see all you on. So shout out to you all who are keeping me company during these times. Another reason I wanted to do this is I think now more than ever we definitely need to have more social outlets, different type of social outlets. And I think it's really easy to see other people's IG live from like the famous people that we follow. But let's be real, that's not, in my opinion, a true organic interaction because they have millions or thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers. So odds are they really get to see and interact with you are very, very slim. And that's not necessarily a slight towards them. But I mean, think about that volume, their chat is going crazy. It's constantly going crazy. And, it can be tough keeping track of, everybody. So for those of you on the IG who joined a little late, if you don't know now, you know, I do have a podcast. I am recording live for you all. This will be pre-recorded and put out later, but you get to see some of the behind the scenes content that goes into recording the show. So without further ado, just to roll right into it, what have I been up to? I've been up to not a lot. Not much has changed on my end, outside of the same things that have been impacting, everyone due to the pandemic of the coronavirus, the new strain of the coronavirus. This is a new strain of the coronavirus, and otherwise known as the COV for Victor, ID for Delta 19, COVID-19. So I actually wanted to take this opportunity to dive into some of my thoughts and feelings on the current pandemic. But before I do, I just want to let you all know that if you are an essential worker, if you are in an essential field, especially if you're in the healthcare field, and especially if you're a federal employee like my mailmen and women out there, and the police officers, the policemen and policewomen out there, firefighters out there, they put their lives at risk every day. And yes, even mailmen and mailwomen, you never really gonna know what you're going to get when you walk into someone's, territory, their property. And now more than ever, they're out there facing exposure every day. My public transit workers, my brother actually works for the public transportation in Pennsylvania, or at least southeastern Pennsylvania, known as SEPTA. He works for SEPTA, and he's out there every day getting exposed. And although it is like a ghost town, the number of passengers on the buses and trains and trolleys are very, very low. They are still more likely to be exposed to something dangerous than someone like me, who pretty much doesn't really have to leave the house. So shout out to everybody listening who falls into that category. Shout out to everyone else who is upon tough situations and you're trying to make lemonade out of lemons and really just manage. I try to tell people all the time, there are definitely wrong ways to handle this. There are no right ways to handle this. This is the first time anyone has ever had to do anything like this. There's no plan. It's not written in stone. There's no list of instructions you get. And, we all can have things like savings accounts. We can all have backup funds. We can all have stocks that we can cash out. There are a lot of different things that we have, but how much money is enough money? How much food is enough food? We don't know. It's really easy to maybe put grocery shopping off a day or two and maybe order out and spend a little extra money ordering out, or spend a little extra money on gas and traveling, when you can just go the next day and go grocery shopping, or go the next week and go grocery shopping. But when you're in a scenario like this, when, you have citywide and statewide and countrywide quarantine guidelines, you don't know when and what and where to do whatever. So shout out to everybody who is handling this the best way that they can. There's so many different people who on a normal day-to-day struggle with just day-to-day life. There are people out there who are homeless. There are people out there who are disabled, mentally or physically. There are people out there dealing with other physical ailments before all of this, or despite all of this, despite all of this, but they're still doing their best to make a way. So shout out to everybody who fall into any of those categories. And I want to be clear, everybody. This is something that should be very, I'm not going to say obvious, because what's obvious to people like me or you may not be obvious to our neighbors, right? Or the people we deal with every day. But there is no ideal situation in all of this for the most part. Everybody is dealing with their own struggles. I think it's really easy from the other side of the fence to look at someone's situation and think to yourself, wow, they have it made. Wow, they have it good. Wow, they're set up pretty right now. They're sitting pretty right now. But everyone's situation is different, and everyone has problems. The goal in life is to have better problems than you had yesterday, but you can't get rid of your problems. You'll never be able to get rid of your problems. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's a normal thing. But the reason I say that is you'll have someone who is working from home, and they could be dealing with particular struggles that they never had to deal with before and working from home. From the other side of the fence, you have someone who maybe got laid off, or maybe had their job put on hold, or they're on temporary leave. And their first thought is, at least you get to work. So it's really easy for them to disregard some of the problems that someone has in working from home because of their current situation. There could be people out there with kids going, hey, you may be out of work right now, but at least you are the only person that you have to feed and take care of. I have to feed my family. I have to feed my kids. I have to feed my nieces and nephews and grandbabies. I have to do that. This is a struggle, a challenge for everybody. There's no right way to deal with this. So just try to look at your situation independently of others. You shouldn't be doing that on a day-to-day anyway, but now more than ever, don't judge your situation off of somebody else's. Don't judge your situation off of somebody else's. Everybody's situation is different. If we were all on like a level playing field, we were all on even ground, then there may be a little bit more room for judgment. Of course, like I mentioned earlier at the top of the episode, there are wrong ways to handle things. Obviously, if you're out there spending your savings on silly things, instead of going out to see what meat and poultry and fish is on sale, you're ordering out every night. Yeah, that's probably not too responsible, regardless of the situation that you're in. But if you're out there, making meals, throwing them in the freezer so that way you have, lunch for the rest of the week, or if you're out there and maybe you walk to the grocery store and pick up a few things as opposed to wasting gas and driving, things like that. You use the store's sanitizer bank, when you go into the grocery store and they have like the sanitizing station there, instead of depleting your supplies from at home, things like that. Best practices to do, right? Those are some of the things that we can take a look at, and be responsible. As far as being social goes, call people up, y'all. Call up your loved ones. Call up your family. Call up and family doesn't necessarily mean blood. Call up your close friends. Call up the person you just met yesterday. If you're a gamer, go online, check on your buddies, your friends. Text maybe that person you haven't spoken to in a really long time. Now more than ever, tomorrow is not promised. But more specifically, we need that level of social interaction that we're just not getting right now. We're just not getting it right now. I know I dropped the ball a little bit on getting these episodes out to you all, but now more than ever, it's probably the most important time to put these out, just to give the people who have been home an extra activity, give you something to do. Keep those, those brains snapping and try to break the monotony a little bit. I think that's pretty important. Another thing that's important, that's honestly, y'all, really been bugging me lately, is the misinformation that's been out there. Just to check on some of my IG followers and listeners right now. What up, big bro? My big bro Todd joined. Appreciate it. And Ray says necessities versus wants in regards to some of the best practices I talked about earlier. And again, very, very important. Good call out. And that can't be any truer. Don't go out there and spend frivolously. SAT word for y'all. Another thing that is a necessity to talk on Ray's point a little bit is being well informed. I think that social media, and I felt this way at work too. There was a lot of this going on at work, but y'all know, like I know, code switching is a thing. And you have to be, especially when you are a subordinate, you have to be very mindful on what and when and how you say things. But I feel like a lot, this social media isn't helpful. I think the two main sources of information that should be referenced is the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, and your state's health department. Those places exist for a reason. WHO, the World Health Organization, which has a pretty awesome acronym, if I do say so myself, is also pretty important to monitor. Because a lot of people will just go to Twitter or Instagram or YouTube, and unfortunately, in some cases, national news networks or local news networks to get their information. And although you do get a little bit of a pass in going to the news, because let's face it, it's called the news for a reason. They should be informed they should fact check before they put things out. But social media can be a bad thing sometimes too, because now more than ever, we have total access to almost all of the information at one time in the palm of our hands. In the palm of our hands, we have instant access to information. It's like the Matrix. It's like we're plugged in all of the time. Somebody who's verified, and that blue check is gospel to some people. Maybe my tone will change and I'll be playing a different tune when I get verified. But all a person needs is a blue check next to their name. They go onto a place like Twitter and they just say, hey, here's a unchecked fact, some more misinformation. And there are thousands, and I'm not kidding y'all. Y'all go on Twitter and Instagram and look how many likes and retweets. And that's not even a pure indication on how much exposure that particular message got. Because think about how many people, and you know who you are, go on Twitter and Instagram and look at stuff like that, and they don't interact with it, like it or retweet it. So you can't even use likes or retweets as a direct, metric on how many people have been exposed to that information or misinformation. You'll get a lot of people who will go on there and see that. It'll take one verified person. All it takes is one. News anchor, celebrity, athlete, regardless of the occupation. All it takes is one for them, and it takes a matter of seconds for them to go on and tweet or post things. And just like zombies or robots, people would just go and believe it. And I think that's unfortunately leads to unnecessary panic, leads to negative reactions. The most powerful thing on the face of the planet is information. The most powerful weapon is a well-informed mind. It's really important that we know what we're talking about. Very, very important. So some of the comments popping off on the IG Live right now. And again, shout out to everyone who is listening to this on Instagram right now. And I hope you listen to the full episode. If you don't get to tune in now, but the fact that people are too lazy to go. I was looking something up the other day, and I actually this came up in one of my previous interviews involving one of my listeners, involving a pretty interesting topic. It's called willful ignorance. So you got things you just don't know, right? Things that you just like, I don't know. You don't know what you don't know. For example, if you are in the market for a new house and you're buying a house for the first time, there are going to be things that you don't know to ask because you haven't come across these things yet. And so maybe you're buying your second house. Then you're going to think about everything that you went through on your first home purchase, and you're going to be more aware and more knowledgeable, so that way you can ask more well-informed questions, right? But then you also got willful ignorance. What is an example of willful ignorance? Okay, let's say I have a friend or a family member who always seems to have money, and I know that they don't have a job, but they always seem to have money. Every time I need a loan, every time we want to go out and have a good time, every time we're ordering food, every time, we're purchasing new furniture, whatever the case may be, they always have enough money to contribute. Willful ignorance is, hey, I know you don't have a job, but I'm not going to ask where you get your money from because I might not like the answer. That's called willful ignorance. You're willingly putting yourself in a position to be absent from the full picture. You're willingly putting yourself in a position to be unaware of all of the details. And you can actually, especially if it comes to any criminal activity, you actually can be held accountable for willful ignorance. Unfortunately, when it comes to social media, willful ignorance is okay. Obviously, I say that with air quotes. It's okay. And you got a lot of people who they'll see somebody, have no idea who this person is, have no idea who this person represents, or post something. And instead of going, hey, who does this person work for? Let me go on their page and see if maybe they're a journalist, or hey, where do they get this information from? Let me go on Google and type in what they just posted and see if I get any hits on it. They just go and do it, and it's pretty frustrating. Shay says, just believing any old thing. I think it gets to the point where it gets a little ridiculous. And I think the people who are more likely to be a victim of stuff like this are people who aren't as used to those like spam or fake or chain messages that go out and go around. You all know what I'm talking about. We always have that older relative or older friend who probably has no business in having a Facebook or Instagram anyway. And you get that chain message. There were two different messages that I got. One claiming to be from the National Guard, and another one claiming to be from the FBI, I believe it was, some other government agency, and came from me from friends, normal average Joe friends like me or you. And it said, hey, they're about to deploy the National Guard soon. They're about to be martial law. Martial was incorrectly spelled, by the way. Pass this along. Now, this wasn't these weren't my actual friends saying these things. It was the content of the actual message. So like if you looked at the message said, hey, my friend just told me this. He is in the National Guard, or she works for the FBI, et cetera, et cetera. And they just pass it along. The thing that's the most frustrating about that is, regardless of what it said, it could just say, hey, the cost of jelly is about to go up to $15. If someone who works for a government agency, or someone who is in the National Guard, works for the government in any capacity, is just texting, they're just texting sensitive information, that's a little far-fetched. And I don't know whether to be frustrated or disappointed when people get that and they read it and go, oh snap, this is true, and then they forward it along to somebody else. And hopefully everyone listening, you all are good enough friends to read it and go, hey, let me not just read this and ignore it. Let me tell my friend, like, hey, this is fake. And I had to do that. I got two different messages. Like I said, I got two different messages from three or four different people. And as soon as I got them, I just respond like, hey, look, this is fake. There was actually a news article posted. I forget what the publication was. I believe it could have been a local news record, but it was actually a news article that was posted like, hey, local officials warn against fake messages, spam messages. And I know at least two of the people that I responded to, like, hey, look, this is fake. They respond, oh, what? Really? It is? Why is it more far-fetched to you that it's fake? Why do you question someone saying that it's fake, but you didn't question when you got it? That doesn't make sense to me. So let's take a look at who else we got on the IG. My little brother Assad has joined. Hey Assad, how are you? Shout out to Assad and Jen Assad Gaming. So my buddy Olay says this stupid patient conspiracy irks my soul. Yeah, there's a lot of people who will pass along these conspiracies, again, without fact checking them. And it gets pretty frustrating. I actually have a really, really, really close friend of mine. He's pretty much family. He deliberately posted a fake article that said that the government created this coronavirus back in 2006. And he literally created it. It was fake. And, just to see what type of reaction he would get. And although I'm not a big fan of spreading misinformation, just like I said, I did find it pretty humorous of the point that he was trying to prove, and that people will just believe anything. And just like clockwork, I started to see that article from different people on my timeline, the different feeds and timelines that I have across different social media platforms. Sure enough, like clockwork, people sharing, hey, look at this thing that I found. And I don't know if it's funny or sad at this point, to be honest with you. So again, I appreciate everybody here tuning in on the IG Live. You're definitely helping this episode to be way more interactive, and I'm hoping that once everybody hear this, once it's posted, that you will follow suit and join my Instagram. Follow me on Instagram and be a part of the next episode. The Instagram will be in the Instagram handle will be in the description of each and every episode. But if you want to go and pause the episode right now and join and follow right now, it is my first name, Tim, Tim, _ ITIYL. So the initials of the podcast. The podcast is I'll Talk If You'll Listen. The initials are ITIYL. So Tim _ ITIYL on Instagram. So let's head on over to, speaking of fact checking, let's check up on some of these comments really quickly, and then we're going to go on over to some CDC and Pennsylvania Department of Health recommended guidelines. Hey, thank you, Ray. I appreciate you enjoying the conversation. I appreciate you being in the trenches here with me and staying tuned. And I hope if and when Instagram cuts me off for having a too long of a live, that you'll go find this episode and listen to it, and maybe even share it with some of your friends who maybe need to hear some cold hard facts, to say the least. Shout out to my buddy Olay for joining. Shout out to, again, the little bro Assad. Shout out to the little sister Jules for joining too. I appreciate that, Jules. And the big bro Ty, thank you. I appreciate you all. So let's go on over to CDC, everybody's favorite website, right? So you're going to hear a little bit of clickety clacky. All right. So again, the first website we're on is the CDC. So for those of you who don't know, the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, is located in Atlanta. And I'm going to be honest, the only reason I know that is because I have a really awesome board game called Pandemic. And it tells you to put the Disease Treatment Center in Atlanta, because that's the headquarters of the Centers for Disease Control. So shout out to being a nerd. Okay, so they have different sections on here, right? One section they got here is called, coronavirus or or COVID-19 from a glance, and specifically the U.S. at a glance. And it talks about some things on here. So I'm just going to read some of this. And guess what, y'all? Guess what I'm about to say? Don't take my word for it. Go and fact check it. Okay. So this was updated today, April 2nd. And it says this page will be updated daily. Numbers close out at 4 p.m. the day before reporting. On Saturday and Sunday, the numbers in COVID-19 U.S. at a glance and the figure describing the cumulative total number of COVID-19 cases in the United States will be updated. These numbers are preliminary and have not been confirmed by state and territorial health departments. CDC will update weekend numbers the following Monday to reflect health department updates. So pretty much what that means in a nutshell, y'all, is sometimes different numbers get reported and it could be false positives. They could be a little bit of false information, not intentionally false, unintentionally false. Hey, Tim, what does unintentionally false mean? So, for example, let's say I live in Montgomery County, which is a suburb of Philadelphia. So let's say I go to Philly, I get sick, I get tested in Philly, and I go to a hospital in Philly. I test positive for COVID-19, and they report that to the health department. That number initially could potentially be categorized as a Philadelphia statistic, when in actuality it's a Montgomery County statistic because I live in Montgomery County. Or the inverse could be true, where maybe it doesn't necessarily count where your home address is, it counts where you get sick at. So let's take the opposite to be true. Let's say they ask me for my home address in the hospital. I give it to them, and they log that. They send that to the Department of Health. As someone who got sick from Montgomery County, that should go towards Montgomery County statistics, when in fact it could be a Philadelphia statistic because that's where I got tested at. So there are a lot of different things that go into the numbers. I remember watching a press conference, a mayoral press conference last week for Philadelphia, and the person speaking from the health department mentioned that there was a disparity in the numbers that were reported between the numbers that he was reporting at the moment and the day before. And he explained the very same example that I gave. There were different statistics and numbers that came in that were reflective of different areas that may not have necessarily meant Philadelphia. And once the cross-referencing came in, they had time to digest the data. They realized like, hey, it was in fact different counties, or hey, it was in fact Philadelphia, et cetera, et cetera. So let's see. Let's go on. Let's continue reading. CDC is responding to an outbreak of respiratory illness caused by a novel coronavirus. Novel in this context means new. So the coronavirus has been around for quite some time. For quite some time. There are different strains of the coronavirus. So there are different strains, just like there's different strains of hepatitis. There are different strains of various different diseases. That's why there are different vaccines for seemingly the same types of things. So this is a new strain of the coronavirus. The outbreak first started in Wuhan, China, but cases have been identified in a growing number of other locations internationally, including the United States. In addition to CDC, many public health laboratories are now testing for the virus that causes COVID-19. COVID-19 in the U.S. at a glance. So far, according to the CDC, and I can't tell you how much I love starting the sentence off that way. According to the CDC, the total number of cases are well over 200,000. So the exact number is 213,144 cases. The total number of deaths are at 4,513. So a little over 4,500 deaths. well over 200,000 total cases. Now, it doesn't necessarily give a timeline. So, I'm sure there are people of that, 200,000 who maybe got sick back in February, or who maybe got sick back in March, since we're in April now. And they say the incubation period is 14 days or 2 weeks. So, I think, as with anything, right, there's balance, there's good and there's bad. The bad thing about this is there's been over 4,500 deaths, and no one wants to hear that. There have been over 4,500 deaths. I know a fair amount have come from Pennsylvania, and that's not good. The good news there, though, if you are trying to find the, good and the bad, is we don't know how long these people have been sick for. So if these people have been sick for quite some time, or have had symptoms from quite some time, and then they move past that, that's the type of news that we're not going to hear much about, right? Unless it's someone famous. We're not necessarily going to hear how people have gotten over it. We're not necessarily going to hear, the successful cases, the successes, the people who overcame the COVID-19. It says here, jurisdictions reporting cases are 55. So we have 50 states. All 50 states are reporting, including the District of Columbia. We have Puerto Rico, Guam, the Northern Marina Islands, and U.S. Virgin Islands are all reporting this data. So this is also pretty important here. It says the data includes both confirmed and presumptive positive cases of COVID-19, which means confirmed cases could be much lower than the 200,000 that we just talked about. Reported to the CDC or tested at the CDC since January 21st, 2020, with the exception of testing results for persons, I don't know that word, y'all. Repatriated, I want to say that is repatriated. So repatriate. Yep, I'm looking at the rest of the sentence. It's definitely repatriated to the United States from Wuhan, China, and Japan. State and local public health departments are now testing and publicly reporting their cases. In the event of a discrepancy between the CDC cases and cases reported by state and local public health officials, data reported by states should be considered the most up to date, which makes sense, right? Because they're going to have the numbers before they send it on over to the CDC. So that makes sense. So they have more numbers here, and then they give you the total. The total here is travel related. So based on that 213,000, over 1,100 have been related to travel. So 1,144. Those related to close contact. So someone who was pretty close to someone or made contact with someone is much higher. So more than double, actually. We're at 3,245 due to close contact. And those under investigation, over 200,000. So that's where the bulk of things are going to come from. So we have 209,755. And if you do the math, it should add up to 213,144. So that's the CDC website. The CDC website also talks about, the reported cases by state. It also tells you about what some of the confirmed symptoms are. So that's pretty important. You take a look at that. But now what we're going to do is we're going to navigate on over to, so for those of you who don't know, I'm from Philly and currently living in the Philadelphia area. So no better place to go to but the Pennsylvania Department of Health. And according to the PA Department of Health, the Pennsylvania overview at the number of confirmed cases is 7,016. So 7,016 confirmed cases in the state of Pennsylvania. And of course, all 67 counties in Pennsylvania are under a stay-at-home order through April 30th. So if you're not aware, the stay-at-home order has been extended through the end of the current month, and all of that information can be found online. My favorite section of any section is a frequently asked question section or fact section, and basically some common questions that have come through, like what is coronavirus, what are symptoms of a coronavirus, how can a coronavirus spread, etc., etc. And these are things, reference points that are going to be pretty important. And believe it or not, even though this has been around since late last year, not that many, let me put it this way, not as many people as you think, and or not as many people as you would hope are aware of what the symptoms are, or even what a coronavirus even is. So I like that the Department of Health has this at the forefront of their website for people to go on and check, and it's pretty important. They have downloadable fact sheets, the whole nine, and there are going to be a lot of people, hey, why are you harping on the facts, right? Or maybe not that many people, but I'm sure there are going to be some people who are like, hey, why are you harping on the facts, Tim? Why can't you just say, hey, this thing is dangerous, you should just stay away from it? The fact that it's dangerous and that you should stay away from it, I think it's pretty implicit. If you don't already know that, in the words of the great B.I.G., now you know. And from what I see, you have two different types of people. You have one type of person who says, hey, I'm going to live my life. I'm not going to let this impact my life. I don't care. I'm going to live it to the best of my ability. And I'm going to go on carefree. We all know about that instance where a bunch of young people in their, around their early 20s or so went down to Florida for spring break. And it's been said that some of them have contracted the virus. Now, again, at the top of the episode, I talked about maybe there aren't a right way to do things, but there are definitely wrong way to do things, and that's a wrong way to do something. You got people like that, and then you got the other type of person who is super scared. They're super scared. They are very, very nervous. They don't want to leave the house for anything under any circumstances. They're very selective about who they let near their home. I know one person in particular doesn't even let people into the home, regardless of their relationship to that person. And I think it's, they're on the extreme. Both people are on the extreme end of the spectrum. Let's check up on the chat, y'all, while we got a small break here. Hey, Ash, how you doing? Great to hear from you. And I appreciate all the whys. Hey, y'all, Ash put 5 whys in her hey. I really appreciate that. You can tell that there's love there. Hey, Mikkel, what's going on, Mikkel? Thanks for joining. Ray says, I have a cousin who was placed in a medically induced coma as a result of COVID-19. That's horrible news, Ray. That's horrible news. I'm very sorry to hear that. That's horrible news. And it really sucks when you have someone who's separated from you and you can't go and see them out of risk or fear of further exposure. So that's always a challenge. Positive thoughts your way. Obviously, do whatever you need to do to stay in a positive attitude, because being upset, being too down in the dumps definitely doesn't help the situation. It hurts the situation. So just be there for your family and friends as much as you can, and try to remain as positive as you can. But speaking of those two different types of people, hey Tim, where do you fall? I think I fall right in the middle. And I know that's kind of cliche to say. I know that's like a pretty obvious answer, but I really do. I think most people do fall in the middle, but they are the quiet. And I think this is another scenario of the vocal majority speaking for everyone. in reality, the vocal majority is really the minority. I think most people are falling in the middle. I think most people are like, hey, I'm not scared. I'm just cautious. I think most people are like, okay, hey, let me wash my hands as often as I can. For the CDC recommended guidelines for 20 seconds, or 30 seconds. And, let me, keep in mind the 6 feet rule, stay away from people. Don't come into close contact with people. Only leave my home for the essentials. But I'm not going to live in fear. I'm going to be cautious, but I'm not going to live in fear. There were some situations before things got really, really serious where there are certain public venues still open. Some bars were still open. Some other public places were still open. And there were people still going into bars. I think they're closer to that first example I gave, where they're kind of like a little bit reckless. I think the people who are a little bit more responsible, like, hey, let me go get my beverages elsewhere. Maybe while I'm out grocery shopping, or, maybe I'll go to the beer distributor. The beer distributor not too far from me is still open. I'm not too sure how or why they're allowed to be. I don't know much about public ordinances local ordinances and laws, but I'm not too sure how a beer distributor is classified as a essential business. Maybe somebody in the Instagram chat, or if you listen to this episode, hit me up and give me the 411. But they're still open, and they have on gloves and masks, and they wipe down things at least once an hour. There are only ever 2 employees working at a time. They have different stations set up. It's very, very rare that 2 people are behind the counter at one time. They also have a cart set up, so you can transport because normally what they'll do is they'll transport the purchase to your car for you, but they have a cart set up so you can kind of do that on your own. They have plastic around the cart. They said they changed. There's a lot that they're doing. There are people who are cautious, but they're not scared. And I think that's where I'm at. I'm cautious, but I'm not scared. One thing I will say, and I know I've been getting on my girlfriend's nerves about this next point, but one thing that I will say is that's been a real challenge for me is the ordering out. So my girlfriend and I try to keep things as normal as possible. We still try to have our date nights where we spend time together. And normally what we would do is we would order out, whether we're watching a movie or a show, or even if we sit down and play a board game together, unless we already made plans to cook, we order out. And she isn't as concerned about ordering out as I am. And I'm going to be honest, for once, I don't really have a logical or rational reason that I'm not ordering out. I just feel like, let me just cook my own food for now. Let's save the money where we can, because we may not be spending money on transportation, and we may not be spending money on going out, but we are spending more money in the electricity bill. We are spending more money on food now because we're buying more of it at home, and we are spending more money on other utilities. Then you have also like behind the scenes costs too. Like, we may not be doing laundry as often, but some of the things that but when we do it, like if we're washing pajamas or things like that, those things could get thrown into the wash more often. So that means water is running more often, and you're going through laundry detergent more often, potentially anyway. And so there's different ways that sometimes offset the cost of things. I'm just kind of paranoid or cautious about ordering out. I don't know who's touching that food. I don't know what safe measures. Let's say you do Uber Eats or Postmates or DoorDash. You don't know what type of hygiene measures the person delivering the food has taken. You don't know who else has been in that car. You don't know how many different places they've been to. It just kind of increases the likelihood of exposure. And although I could be a little over the top in that category, I'd rather just play it safe. It may be nothing like some Chipotle, but hey, let's make our own tacos. Let's make our own burritos. Let's make our own salads. Let's just try our best. Luckily, my girlfriend and I, we both enjoy cooking. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I have no problem trying new things. So it hasn't been too much of a struggle for me. But I know my girlfriend has gotten pretty irritated or frustrated with me because she wants to order out, and she won't order out unless I want to eat too. And if I say no, she'll get a little irritated because she can't have what she wants. But that's usually the case anyway. If she can't get what she wants, she's always irritated. If y'all don't hear from me in the next episode, you know why? Because she heard this and killed me. But that's been the biggest struggle. And for everyone who has known me for, I'd say even 2 weeks, one of my favorite things to do is karaoke. And obviously I can't do that right now. So I have been looking into some alternatives. So hopefully I can explore those. And once I get those down, I'll share those with you all. But I miss karaoke. I miss getting behind a mic and trying to sing. I miss the freedom and the stress relief that comes with that. I miss hanging out with my bar buddies, who are very diverse, old, young, men, women, gay, straight. And I miss that. That's one level of social interaction that I genuinely miss. I'm hoping to somewhat, I can't fully replace it, but I'm hoping to, somewhat replace it by, of course, picking up on the episodes a little bit more frequently, and of course doing the Instagram lives, and hopefully touching base with everybody a little bit more frequently and a little bit more often. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is just the challenge that comes with living with someone during times like these, more especially being in a relationship, because let's be honest, I think everybody needs alone time. Everybody needs their distance, and we all get it in different ways, whether it's the commute to work or school, whether it's, you go to work before or after the person you live with or the people you live with. That means you are, you may get home before them, so you have a little bit of time to kind of unwind. You may get home after them. You may leave work after them, which means you have a little bit more time to unwind once they leave for their day. But with both of us being home right now, it has been a bit of a challenge in a way that sometimes the little things start to bother you. And I don't know about you all, but me personally, I'm an overthinker. So I like to be as fair as I can be. And sometimes I'll look at myself and go, hey, is it me? Am I just tripping? Or, hey, is this something I should really talk about? Or let her know that, hey, this is bothering me, because we've all gotten into dumb arguments before, especially arguments. Hey, big bro Cheeb joint. Especially with those people that we love the most, we got into silly arguments. So you wonder, hey, should I even mention this? Is this just me? Then you got to consider the situation. Hey, we're around each other a lot, and the normal time that we would have separated, we don't have. So we got to find alternative ways. Luckily, we're both privileged enough to have a 2-bedroom apartment. So the second room, which I'm in right now, first time recording in here too, by the way. So there may be a little bit of a sound difference, as there is not as much in here to catch the sound. It's still a work in progress, but we do find different ways to separate from each other. But it's been a bit of a struggle, at least for me. I like to think for her too, but we haven't really talked about it or spoken about it, to be honest with you. But when you're around someone for so much, sometimes you just get irritable and you don't know why, and You don't want to be mean. That's never your intent. But you really start to think about things, and sometimes you find it hard to separate what's a legitimate issue and what's not. And I would say that's been a struggle for me. And definitely like you all's opinion on that, some advice, or how you all handle it. I waved at my big bro Cheeb on Instagram. He said he doesn't wave. Speaking of Cheeb would he's a great inspiration in my life, and I tend to go to him with many, if not all, of my problems. And first he'll make fun of me. That's how you know that he loves me. First he'll make fun of me. He'll say, "Oh man, y'all only got 3 years in," or "Hey, y'all just started living with each other. Or wait till y'all married, and oh, you ain't seen nothing yet." Kind of just josh around with me a little bit. But then he'll get to the advice, and he'll give me some advice. So, hey, Cheat, maybe I'll be hitting you up soon about some ways to deal with that. But I would love to hear from you all, especially those of you in a very similar situation as I am. I love to go to people like my big brother, because he will put things in perspective for me, and he can speak from a sage-like perspective, and provide a level of wisdom that maybe someone my age can't. However, there are times where you want your peers' opinion, just to see if you're alone on the island. So, but I think this is a good time to end really quickly, and just like I hit the time frame right on the nose, y'all. There is a limit to how long you can do an Instagram live, and Instagram is telling me I have about a minute and a half left. So I'm just going to wrap up and say thank you all for joining this very special episode. Fact check yourself. Fact check your friends. Fact check me. I had one buddy hit me up and say, "Hey, that I forget exactly what it was, but my buddy Chuck, you guys all know Chuck. I talk about him a lot. I know more than one Charles, but this one, I think I'm the only one of his friends that refers to him as Chuck. But he actually called me out one time on something. My friend Amanda actually called me out on something. So you're a good friend if you fact check. So fact check everyone. Join me on Instagram for future episodes. I would love to keep doing this in the future, y'all. And you guys have really made this a heck of an experience for me. And continue to tune in to the episodes. It is on any and everything that you listen to podcasts on. So as always, thank you for tuning in, and I'll keep talking if you'll listen. Take care, everybody.